Hi, welcome to another episode of MYD Global. I'm your host, Leanne Hackman-Carty. Have you ever heard of the organization DERA, D-E-R-A? They're actually the International Association for Preparedness and Response. In today's episode, I speak with Howard Pierpont. He's a founder of the organization and a board chair. And what we're talking about today is the whole issue of ham radio operators and how they can play an important role in your communication strategy during the response and recovery. So stay tuned. Hi, Howard. How are you doing today?
Good morning. Just fine. It's a beautiful day down here. The temperature's actually above freezing in Greeley, Colorado.
Oh, good. So, Howard, I know you and I met a couple years ago. Just curious, as far as, tell us a little bit about your background.
I'm the son of a meteorologist, weatherman, and a school teacher. I've been interested in disasters of all types since I was very small and have managed to be involved with trying to assist people out of disasters since then, even through my corporate times. And now am the chairman of the board of an nonprofit organization based in the U.S. called the Disaster Emergency Response Association, also known as DERA. And we have, go ahead.
Oh, well, I'm just curious. So what does DERA do? What kinds of program services do you guys have?
DERA was originally founded on amateur radio back in 1962, and it was based upon some very specific needs at that point. DERA has a three-pronged approach, and that approach is preparedness, logistics, and communications. Although we started with ham radio, the communication side just continues to grow so rapidly. And 20 years ago, the concept that we could be on a video chat at this kind of a distance is very, very unusual. Back in 1964, I actually saw a live broadcast from France to Montreal during Expo 60. Pardon me, it was 67. And that was a big deal to see Maurice Chevalier live. But today we can do it. And having that ability just continues on.
Yeah. So as far as that's one thing I do want to talk to you about is that whole communications piece. I know your background, you've got a lot of information, a lot of experience with the ham radio piece. And I know when communities are experiencing disasters, communications is often one of the biggest challenges. Can you tell me, just say in a layman's kind of way, how ham radio operators can assist in disaster response?
Certainly. Almost 100% of the ham radios are owned by individuals. And these individuals have taken tests and they've been certified by the government in their respective area around the world. They can use those radios to communicate with others. Okay, so that seems kind of obvious. But in the United States, there are 7 million people that have radios in their vehicles. So if for some reason or other, all the power is out and the telephones don't work and the internet's down and all the other communication methods aren't there, they can still go ahead and talk to what we call a repeater. And those repeaters will move the messages throughout the world. Recently, we did a test where we needed to have a message move 50 miles. Well, that message moved 150 miles in one direction, then went to Mexico City, then went up to Montreal, and then came back to the States.
Wow.
Because a direct line was not available, but it was instantaneous. There's also a process where phone calls can be, or messages can be placed into areas where they don't currently have phone systems, and those messages are actually hand delivered. They're transcribed and then carried in. Status reports from folks that have been in a disaster or currently in a disaster can be transmitted out. There was a time when it was all done with a telegraph key and the tick, 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 tick. But now we have the ability to not only use voice, but we have the ability to run video over the ham radios so that we can have essentially what we're seeing today. But they're all self-powered, self-reliant, and literally around the world.
So when, say, an emergency operations center, they've got their plan in place, is it normal that they would have this component included in their communications strategy, or is it something that's not very well coordinated?
A good emergency operations center will have this, will have a desk with 2 or more ham radio operators available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for all of the operations periods. Also, the weather service has desks, and they have weather spotters that go out. So I live in an area in a county that has more tornadoes than any other county in the country. So I live right at the edge of the Tornado Alley, and we have people that go out, spot the tornadoes, and then relay the message to the ham radio operator that's at the weather service, and that becomes part of the weather spotting, the weather forecasting. So what you see on CBC on those lives when they say it's radar truth, that's one thing. If they say based on ground truth, that means that a ham radio operator is out there and they're at a safe distance, but they can actually see the funnel clouds.
And so these ham operators, you said that they're all volunteer?
Yes, we buy all of our own equipment. We maintain the equipment. Most of us belong to one or more organizations, local organizations, so that we can coordinate. But we also belong to organizations that support the emergency operations centers. So we will take federal tests or federal courses, make sure that we have our certificates of completion on those, and that those are on file and that we're badged the same as, or similar to the way emergency operations center folks will be badged. Mm-hmm. But it's all straight out of pocket. There's no federal money at all. DERA actually purchases additional radios, and I have a group of about 50 right now that are available for people if they need to go out and do some work, or we will do an award to one of the local organizations so that they can upfit their operation.
Uh-huh. And so you found over the years that this, when all else fails, ham communications is something that has been very valuable. It's probably the only way they could communicate, or? Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, the county that I live in, the Emergency Operations Center has cabling that runs outside the building, and DERA sponsors a trailer that has multiple ham radios in it. And we roll up with the trailer, do the full hookup, and we can talk on just about any band throughout the entire spectrum to be able to get those messages out, be able to receive the messages so that when communications go down, we're still able to work.
Yeah.
People say, well, how can all the communications go down? Well, this past weekend, during the busy holiday time, there was an automobile accident in Sacramento, California. So automobile accidents happen every day, except that was the pole that they hit was the one that had all the internet service for the Sacramento airport. So not only could you not use your smartphone or your laptop, none of the airlines could check in any of their people. You couldn't get on the plane unless you'd been manually authenticated. And they were actually using ham radio during that time to get some of the work done.
Wow.
So communication's real key, although we tend not to think about what's going on and how it's happening.
Yeah, we take a lot for granted. And I think a lot of times you go, okay, well, have a great communication strategy. You think about social media, your Twitter feed, all these things. But if all of that is down, what is plan B and C? And so
Right.
having this as part of your strategy seems to be a very smart way to look at things. If I'm a community that has not thought of this yet as part of my strategy, how would I go about learning more? Would it be through the DERA website, or what kind of resources would you think would be valuable?
If they would like to reach out to the DERA website, that's www.disasters.org or www.preparedness.org, and we'll be more than happy to forward on the information and to support them.
Great.
Also, if they put a general call out to the community, I think they'd be very surprised to find out how many ham radio operators they already have.
Yeah.
We're also now seeing ham radio operations in snowstorms where hospitals need to get doctors and nurses in. So the four-wheel drive clubs that have those big high-wheeled trucks to go out, or SUVs to go out most everywhere, will be dispatched through the ham radio as part of the health and welfare process. And they'll get those doctors and nurses into the vehicles and get them to the hospital so that they can perform the life-saving work that they need to do.
Right. Well, I think it's always amazing until you really look at what your community has. You might be surprised. You might assume you don't have these things, but when you really start digging and talking to people and getting the word out, I think people would be amazed at what they actually have for resources. So that's awesome. So as far as your website, the DERA website, the disaster.org, does it have other resources that would be helpful for people?
It has quite a number of resources. We have live links. We have monographs that have been posted, and we're always looking for more people with ideas that they'd like to see put out there. We're certainly a resource. Part of the problem is there's so much out there that we can't capture all of it. And many times it's a case of go out to the site, send us an email, and ask a question, and we'll get back to you in pretty rapid fashion.
Yeah.
So we can certainly move that through. We also have a Facebook page or group, Disaster Com, and that is updated constantly. We have a number of people throughout the world because we are an international non-governmental organization, nonprofit, and we're constantly having updates from those folks. And right now we're certainly following the Australia fire issues quite intently.
Yeah. Well, Howard, is there anything else before we wrap up that I might have missed or you'd like to comment on?
Well, all I can say is look around, be prepared, be ready. When the message comes to evacuate or to take particular action, please pay attention to that. If one is interested in becoming a ham, I know that when I took my license, I was sitting alongside a young lady who was 13 years old, and she finished the test before I did. It's not a difficult test. There's a lot of common knowledge out there. There are many wonderful study guides, and the license is good for 10 years. And at one point, the cost of radios was very high, and you can still spend some good deer money, but you can get a handheld that'll be quite suitable for most purposes for $35.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, I'll put some of those links in the video description. So, Howard, thanks again for taking the time. Maybe we'll talk again on a different topic, but thanks for all the work you do in helping people prepare, and stay safe.
And thank you for having me, and thanks to the audience. Have a good day.